Good morning in the wonderful woods of Chamonix. Alright, so I guess you're here for probably two possible reasons. First, you watched my movie End Svalbard and then wanted to find some more information on it, maybe some exclusive behind-the-scenes material or some director's thoughts on some scenes, and this is exactly what it is, so stay with me. Or second, you wanted to watch my movie End Svalbard and thought, this here on YouTube, this could be it. It isn't, but stay with me as well, because it will be interesting and fun, and I will watch the movie through and explain just some of my favorite scenes from the film and how I shot them, what I thought, how I managed to get certain shots in the cold while skiing. But I urge you to watch the film first, because there are some small spoilers in here. I link the film down in the video description, and after that, come back and enjoy the movie breakdown.
One foot in front of the other, and then you do that for several days, and suddenly you have crossed the whole Svalbard.
And now, there's nothing left to do, except to start skiing. Yeah, so the scene where we start to ski, this one. To be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I was skiing the first time on this expedition skis. I was in the Arctic for the first time, and I just thought, this is the very first day, the very first meters of us skiing for 40 days, and I need to film as much as I can. Spoiler, I didn't, because I would just need to get into this feeling of skiing every day myself.
April 2nd, day 4. Late start again, mainly because of my condition. No sleep and the cold. And then the storm comes.
This storm, yeah, that's an interesting one, because some people asked me on how I got the drone in the air in this snowstorm, and the simple answer is I just tried, and I had to try because I wanted to get the shots. I didn't know how the drone would perform in such weather, although I've flown in pretty bad snow rainstorms over a lake before. So I knew it probably works, and if not, if the drone drops down, I could probably get it. So in the next shot you see Mats-Jürgen and the others walking in front of the camera, and it was a brutal day. We had wind that was blowing the snow horizontally in our faces, it was cold, we didn't see anything, and it was probably the worst day of this whole trip. And the way I got this shot to be so smooth is, by accident I found a pretty nice way to attach the drone to a pulka, and then just put the drone facing backwards on the first pulka, strapped it down and pressed on record. And because of this little gimbal that DJI drones have, it created this super stable shot, which is awesome. And then to get this kind of curve, I just told the first person with the drone to not walk straight, but walk kind of in curves through the snow. And then I would just pick one moment where you could see all of us walking this nice little curve, which turned out to be a really nice idea for this drone. Yeah, so this next scene is us digging the snow cave. And this is the only time in the film where I only used GoPro material, because that day my main camera wasn't really working. In the morning I changed my lens in the tent, and then from the ceiling of the tent came one drop of water exactly onto my sensor when it was open. So I didn't have any sensor cleaners with me, I forgot them. I didn't know how to clean a sensor otherwise. And I didn't want to touch it because I thought I might break it. So that's why the digging is only GoPro, which is kind of really the only time in the film.
How cool is this?
So nice. Wow, we were. That's why I'm doing these kind of trips.
Yeah.
So when I was editing the film, I thought, I have very many scenes of us skiing. I have very many scenes of landscapes, but I don't have so much inside of the tents. And that is because it was extremely hard to film inside the tents. Imagine if you're outside, and the temperature difference between outside and the tent is probably, if the stove is running inside the tent, it can be 20-25 degrees difference. And then you have this very cold camera, it's freezing, it's minus 10 degrees, this whole metal aluminum body of the camera. You bring it inside the tent and everything fogs up instantly. but I needed to film inside. So every time, for example, this scene where they are playing cards, I remember I went inside and said, hey guys, can I film something inside? You can play cards or whatever, drink coffee. And then I just stood there for 10 or 15 minutes waiting for the camera to get warm, because if you wipe it, it will just fog up again because it's still cold, this whole glass and metal. So yeah, pretty difficult. That's definitely something I didn't think about in the first place. And I thought about a lot of things, not about this problem. Alright, so I guess we're probably halfway into the film, and if you haven't seen my film End Svalbard yet, I urge you to watch it, because right now there are some serious spoilers ahead as the story kind of starts to unfold and we get into the more serious parts of the trip. We face some challenges we didn't expect. So if you haven't seen it, watch it. The link is down in the video description. After that, come back and I'll continue to break down some of my favorite scenes.
Okay, dogs, let's get warm.
Here, for example, this was the first day where we actually had to cover up our faces completely because it was freezing cold. The wind was blowing. It was minus 15 degrees maybe on that day. And the first day my feet got kind of cold and were starting to freeze seriously. And then there's this picture where I think often about, where you see Jonas holding the tent and it's flapping in the wind and he has trouble pitching it. But since Jonas and I were only two persons in this tent, and I filmed the others pitching tents and also him, there were some days where he needed to pitch the tent alone, and I think he was kind of mad about it because it's not really easy alone in strong winds. But yeah, he wanted to have the movie as well as me, so he just did it. But there were some days, I think, where he kind of complained and said, hey Moritz, could you maybe help me pitching this tent because it's kind of hard. Yeah, so that's something I remember from these tent pitching scenes.
April 23rd, day 25. Step by step, ice cold air in the face. Lomonosophoner has no end in sight.
So after this epic 3-day showdown of us crossing Lomonosophoner, you know, this big giant ice field, which really took us 3 days to just walk across it because it's so huge, Mats Erik says this.
Perhaps it's time to decide if we're going down to Videfjorden or staying up on the glacier now. Maybe even have a vote.
And this is one of the very rare scenes in the film that is actually staged, and that is because of one simple reason. He said that earlier that day, and then the whole group stands in a circle and discusses, should we go down, should we stay up? And it is in the film, this scene, but I didn't get his very first sentence of, yeah, let's have a vote and discuss. So later that day, I think, that evening, I said, Mats Erik, I need you to say this specific sentence. So that is one of the very rare scenes that are actually staged and not filmed in the real situation.
Okay, that is kind of epic.
That is so epic.
We decide to go down, and then on our way down to the fjord we find this giant ice cave, or actually the system of two almost connected ice caves. And that was actually the very first proper FPV drone shot that I did on the trip, and that was day 26, because before that I just wouldn't manage or couldn't find the time to build my drone, to get it ready and to fly it in the cold. I think it was worth it because these shots, in my opinion, are pretty unique in this film, this perspective of just flying through these tiny spaces and these epic spaces you don't really find anywhere else.
I don't know, it doesn't look bad up here though.
Yeah.
So as I said, I filmed probably 99% of the film on prime lenses with a very, very few exceptions. And let's watch this scene, and I think this scene would have been very different if I've been able to use a zoom lens on my camera.
Jonas, what do you think? Where can we find snow? Everything here is ice.
Yeah, that's what I thought actually.
Ah, it's a glacier. It's glacier ice.
Oh, that was a lake though.
Yeah, I know.
But and the river is running like half a meter further down. But
Yeah, but it's also lakes everywhere here.
Oh, but this is glacier ice.
Is
You
it?
think so? I don't think so. I don't think so. That would not explain why the blocks from the glacier came down.
But if you look at the ice, it's...
I don't think it matters if it's glacier ice or not. It's ice, and we can't camp on ice. So let's just conclude that it is ice and go somewhere there is snow.
So it's either going up or going further back. Because fact is we're standing on ice.
Right, so this is probably my favorite scene of the whole film, and when I went to the edit room to edit the movie, I couldn't really remember that I filmed this, and I saw this in the footage watching this and thought, this is just brilliant, and I put it in the film without cutting anything away. Thinking about this scene now, I guess it only works so well because I wasn't able to zoom in. I was fixed to my position, I was fixed to this one focal length, and all I could do is just pan and try to film the person who is talking. And then Sigurd comes in and says, I don't think it matters if it's glacier ice or not. And then I pan back to Jonas and he says, because fact is we're standing on ice. And a scene like that is just pure luck. And in a documentary like this, you can't really plan it.
Standing on ice.
Oh yeah, and in case you were wondering how I get all these bits and pieces of audio, yes, I mic'd up everyone, and everyone had this tiny little microphone attached to their collar, and I was recording every day, all day. So in the morning I would press record, in the evening I would press stop record. That's how I got all this amazing audio from everyone. Now, this is a shot I clearly remember because on that day we were entering this frozen fjord in front of this epic glacier front. And I knew I needed to get this drone shot just to show the scale and to show this milestone on our trip. But unfortunately, the day before I flew my drone in kind of a snowstormy weather situation, and there was moisture inside the DJI drone gimbal, these small little things that make the camera stable. So on that day, which was sunny but also freezing cold, the drone's gimbal would just freeze and get stuck and don't really work properly. And if you look at this shot, you kind of see it wobble sometimes, and that's because of the frozen gimbal, and it was probably the only scene where it wouldn't be too distracting and I could use it. And if you look at this part of the footage, for example, which is not in the film obviously, it's super wonky and the gimbal just won't work properly. It was frozen and stuck. And we were all standing in line ready to go on the glacier front for like 10 or 15 minutes, and I was trying to get the drone in the air, getting the gimbal to work properly, getting the drone back in my hands, blowing on it just with hot air out of my mouth to try and make it work for just 5 or 4 minutes for this one shot. And then after, I don't know how long, maybe 20 minutes, I got to a point where it would work for maybe a minute. I said, okay, we have to go now. We went on the glacier front. I got this shots where you kind of see the wobble, but it's still okay to put it in the film. And then when this scene was over, the gimbal would just get too cold in the air, would freeze again and wouldn't work. And talking about frozen camera equipment, so I remember this one day, I think it was week 1 or week 2, the shutter, you know, this tiny little curtain in front of the sensor of the camera that closes and opens very quick if you take photographs. That probably just got a little bit wet, and then during one picture I took, one photograph, it would close and never open again. So my camera was basically unusable. And I thought, okay, this is very delicate. You can't really touch it without risking breaking it, this little curtain thing. So I thought, what can I do in order to get my camera running? And the only thing I could think of is, you know, we had the stoves inside our tents to keep the tents warm. So I took off my lens, put it aside, and then held my frozen camera over the stove for like 30 minutes. And at some point after maybe 10, 12 minutes, I would hear this click and the shutter open again. And I thought, okay, this is kind of working. And with my hand over the fire as well, I kind of felt when it got too hot, and then I turned the camera and basically baked it a little bit and baked all this water that got trapped inside out of the camera, and it worked. So from that day on, whenever my camera would get a little bit wet, I would just hold it over the stove for 10 minutes or 12 or something to get it dry again. The same with my lenses. Earlier I said they would fog up inside of the tents, and the moisture kind of stays inside the lenses. So I would take them in my hands, just hold them in front of or above the stove until my hands start to burn, and I knew, okay, this is kind of getting too hot maybe. But in the end it worked, and I got the water out of the lenses and the camera body. The thin ice. So yeah, this is me skiing through this old kind of wet slushy snow, and I thought, this is getting intense now and interesting, so I needed my shots, and I kept on filming. And sometimes I would ask the others, is it okay if I go there to film you from there in this direction where you kind of assess the thin ice? And they were like, yeah, but it's also maybe dangerous, and be careful.
Right now, we're walking on this much ice.
You could feel the ice getting wobbly, and it would just shake and wobble if you stood on there or jumped a little bit. But if you've never been standing on this thin ice and you couldn't see the ice, it was kind of snow covered, it's very abstract to think about the real danger in that situation. Yeah, also here when you see Sigurd scraping his ski across the slush and you see the water coming up from underneath, it is really, really dangerous. But in this situation, I didn't think about it. I thought, this makes a really nice image for the film, and it's epic and it's intense. So yeah, next time maybe I should have in mind that there are very, very different situations, and that this kind of was one of the rare times on this trip that probably was life-threatening if anything has gone wrong.
The view is gonna be amazing. Looking all over the fjord, sun is shining, blue skies almost. It's gonna be a good day, I think.
So this is the last scene I want to talk about today, and it was the only day in the whole trip where we had really, really long uphills. We needed to get from the fjord about 500 or 600 meters of altitude up on the glacier. And it was kind of the direct way. And normally with pulkas, you don't really do it because they're just too heavy. They weigh 50, 60 kilograms. And you can see us fighting against gravity. And then we need one who pulls the pulk and two who pushes from behind. In one way, it was kind of fun, but it was also very hard because it was physically demanding that day.
What about making a pulley system straight up somewhere?
So after we had built this pulley system, we had kind of the steepest part behind us, and then was a medium uphill, but with a pulk still super heavy behind your back. I couldn't keep up with the others. They were just too fast on this day for me. So eventually I just ditched my pulk. I unclipped myself, put my pulk somewhere in the hill and said, all right, goodbye, my friend, I'll get you later. And then I was taking my camera and just running with my skis to the others to be able to film something, because I thought this is the perfect storytelling day. We are fighting our way uphill and I'm kind of fighting against my pulk and against gravity, and I couldn't really film what I wanted to film. So that was one of the hardest days for me that I can remember.
We're going to go down all the way, get Moritz's polka. So might as well have some fun, eh?
In the end, it wasn't really me who got my pulk, but the others, because they kind of didn't really have enough and wanted to get some more exercise on that day, so they went all the way down, got my pulk and pulled it back up to me, which was really nice from them. So that's it with the small movie breakdown from me, the creative person behind End Svalbard. And if you haven't watched the movie so far, you should definitely do it. I linked the film in the video description below. So thank you for staying with me that long, and see you next time.